Hello, welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be just kind of rambling about the stages in Multiversus. I'm primarily going to be playing as Marvin the Martian since he's my main, and talking about the stages in relation to him, but I will occasionally touch upon other characters if there's something interesting to talk about in regard to them. I will also be focusing on stages that have 4 players rather than stages where it's just 2 players, because you could count on one hand the number of times I've played 1v1 versus the assembly of hands you'll need to count the times I've played teams or silly mode. So the first stage on the list is one the game launched with, Batcave. It actually has quite a few interesting gimmicks. One of the first and most notable ones are these Batmobiles here. I like that they're different from each other, so it's representing kind of a different version of Batman. But what's interesting about these is that most of the stages, if they have additional platforms, are these kind of what I call pass-throughable platforms where you can jump through the bottom or clip through the top below, but they're paper thin effectively. You can't latch onto them or really do much of anything like that. Meanwhile, the Batmobiles here are kind of like tiny center platforms or major platforms where they do have sides you can latch onto, and that is one of the unique aspects of Multiversus versus other Smash-likes. Having sides you can grip to rather than just the edge of the stage like in Super Smash Bros. Or Nick All-Stars Brawl. The thing I don't particularly like is that once you destroy one of these cars, it's gone forever. There's no like time limit where it returns, and that's unfortunate because I think it adds a little bit of gameplay opportunity. Like if you're down here and someone's here and you want to get back up, you could potentially try to maneuver yourself in a way of getting up there that way. Or you could try getting over here by kind of going left and then right, but it's significantly more difficult, so it adds some interesting challenge to it. The stage also has some interesting hazards. There's this smoke effect, which I think is the same as the Batman smoke bomb in terms of how it works, and also has these bats here which damage you if you stand inside their their hitbox. This stage is the only one with any hazard that can damage the player. All the other stages, the only damage that will occur to you is if your opponent does something or uses an item. So honestly, in that regard, it's probably the most unique stage in the entire game. And yeah, that damage racks up fast. You have to play around it, which just makes these cars here that much more interesting. Where if someone is down here and the bats are appearing, they'd have an even bigger interest in trying to get back on the center stage or over here. So it's unfortunate that when you do get rid of these, and they disappear pretty quickly, you're just left with this central platform. And despite the kind of stage gimmicks and hazards, like in terms of architecture, I guess you can say it's functionally identical to the training room and many other stages. One thing, actually, do this to reset the Batcave stage. There may be a more efficient way of doing that, but I don't know it. Now, one amusing thing for Marvin is that he can very easily use his UFO to get like an additional 2 jumps. And that makes him pretty formidable in this area over here. And even down here, where he can use his UFO if he's ever knocked down there, to then latch onto the side of the Batmobile and get back up. Not many other characters can do something like that. Bugs Bunny, if he has his rocket available to him, could. I think Steven Universe has his shield. But other than that, it's kind of up in the air. In terms of the overall appearance, I think in general the stages look very interesting. There's a lot of detail here. There's a Joker and Alfred in the background on the Bat monitor. There's a Penny and the T-Rex that appears throughout multiple Bat caves, even when it's supposed to be a serious story. The only thing I don't quite get is what exactly this central platform here is supposed to be. Scooby's Haunted Mansion is one that kind of had to grow on me. Initially, I didn't particularly like it, and that's probably just because there were so few stages that you end up playing on it over and over and over again. But it is one of the more interesting stages in the sense that you can manipulate it. You can cause the floors to disappear, leaving a gap to potentially spike enemy players in. But you can also reset that. You can have the floor come up again. So different characters are probably going to have different play styles with these. Personally, having as many opportunities to drop this as possible is best for a Marvin player due to how good his spike tends to be. The fact he can even kind of camp up there makes him very formidable when he's over you. But a player who might be playing as, say, Gizmo, and his car is going to want as much of the floor available for him to drive on as possible, especially if he doesn't know any of the goofy moves and tricks to allow him to kind of jump up with his car. But anytime he's in it, like, that's basically an object you want to avoid more than, like, tackle against. So a Gizmo player would have a vested interest in resetting the floors upward as much as he can. One little detail I absolutely adore is that when you walk over these sort of trap door tiles, dust falls from them, giving just a little hint that these aren't as secure as one might expect them to be. The walls in Scooby's mansion can be destroyed extremely easily. It takes just 2 like partially charged kicks of Marvin there, and they don't reset, which can come off as a little disappointing, but it's not too bad given that the other aspect of the stage is way more interesting. And when the game does relaunch, I'd like to try playing around on this stage and seeing what strategies one can come up with in regards to this stuff. I like all the references to Scooby-Doo's original run. There's that ghost there, the creeper, there's, you know, some classic Scooby villains, Caveman. There's that chest from, I think, 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo it was called. It's an overall pretty nice looking stage, and the outside also looks pretty neat. The main aspect of the stage is how enclosed it is, and that's even worse with these walls. One of the reasons people might not particularly like it is if you have super high damage and you get like knocked around, you can just bounce on the ceiling, off the floor, in every which way direction. Well, that didn't work out quite as much as I want to, but it's very easy to like get kind of knocked around, pinballed all around the stage when you're high damage, and I guess I get why some people don't like that. I mean, granted, I didn't particularly like it either, but part of it might just be, again, I've played on the stage so much due to the very limited stage count that... There we go. Very limited stage count, I just got kind of tired of it. Yeah, overall, a pretty decent one. Probably one of the more annoying stages to play on if you're playing against someone who's just really, really good, though. Like, I can definitely see that becoming especially frustrating when there's all these close quarter combat areas and these opportunities to get spiked. Now, Scooby's Mansion did have a variation at launch that looked different, but the way it looked was so... the differences were so minimal that you honestly really didn't register when you played it. So I'm glad they went back and really made the stage look way different. It's now totally dilapidated in a state of abject ruin. Mechanically, it plays pretty similar, like, to normal Scooby's Mansion as you would expect, with the bonus of having way more freedom to kind of hop around and use areas like this on the top side. The gimmick of Scooby's Mansion being super enclosed and therefore likely to cause players to get bounced around on the walls and stuff is minimized severely, but I'm glad that the main gimmick, these floor raising and lowering mechanisms, are still here. I will also say that, like, even when you destroy the walls in Scooby's Mansion, it doesn't become just like a center platform similar to the lab area, the training room, but there actually are somewhat unique in the fact there's 3 rather tiny platforms to stand on. So the amount of action you get and the proximity to other players is extremely high. It's not easy to, like, kind of dodge away from the action and have a lot of breathing room when these are all lowered. However, if you do want it to be more like the training room, just hit these mechanisms and now it's a rather elongated central platform. Yeah. One thing I kind of forgot to show in Batcave that's very funny is if you try walking off the stage as the Iron Giant, you can't. He's too big. He latches onto the sidecar. Just something funny I discovered. The music for stages never really clicked with me all that much, but it's probably because I'm not like a big Batman fan that I recognize the songs from here, or big enough of a Scooby-Doo fan to recognize music here. But the music in the Game of Thrones stage, the throne room, is just goofy in the sense that it's so over the top and grandiose and epic that it plays during a match where Marvin and Gizmo can fight like Batman and LeBron James. The disconnect between the tone of the music and the goofiness on stage, I'd argue, is inherently funny. One little detail I really like about this stage is when you first go into it, you can see the stage itself kind of assemble. The throne room assembles at a symbol over there for one of the Game of Thrones houses rises up. It's kind of an amusing little detail, given that when the characters appear, there's also like a little animation, so it makes the stage feel almost like a character in of itself. The primary gimmick of the stage is it starts out a lot like Scooby's Mansion No Roof in terms of the layout, where there's walls you can climb up but you can't destroy them. But then after a period of time, the walls and floors kind of disappear and the stage turns into something similar to the training room stages. You can still somewhat survive a close encounter down here. And when the walls rise up, you can somewhat bait people into getting to, like, up to this area, which makes knocking them up to the top of the stage into the ring out zone a lot easier. I don't know for certain, but this does seem like the largest stage in terms of where all the barriers are. The soundtrack for this stage genuinely is great. I listen to it every so often on YouTube. I also like the 3 wolves down here, in reference to, I think, House Stark. So even though this stage, like, quite often ends up looking like a training room stage, the fact there is kind of a cycle to it that you can work around makes it interesting enough of a stage that I think it avoids kind of coming off as too similar to the other stages. I know for the competitive version, once a cycle gets rid of these walls and this floor tile here, and this one, it stays that way, which is kind of boring, you know? Finn's Tree Fort 1 platform is still my favorite stage in terms of appearance. I absolutely love the overhaul they did with this stage. It's extremely comfy. Similar to Batcave, there's some structures on the side that you can kind of latch onto that are destructible, honestly, just by jumping on them. I didn't even attack them. Can bounce you around, and unfortunately when they're destroyed, they're gone completely. They don't grow back or anything, which is a bit unfortunate because they get destroyed pretty quickly, and they do have a little unique aspect to them. And once they're gone, the stage becomes, well, the training room stage with a couple of pass-throughable platforms. Not much to really talk about there. The daytime version of Tree Fort is probably my least liked one. I find working around this main pass-throughable platform a bit annoying as Marvin, but that's probably just because I need to do better at aiming and releasing his up neutral, given that he has the advantage of being able to shoot people from down here, so it might be a bit of a skill issue on my part. If you're up here, you're in a lot more danger due to the close proximity to the ring out zone up there. But if you get knocked over, you'd have to kind of work around these sort of tree structures here in order to get back down, which is possible. And if you're someone like Marvin, you can pretty easily go the other way around as well. But like the tree structures in the nighttime version, they are very easily destroyable. The fact there is, like, you know, 2 sets of elongated platforms, one down here and one up here, does still make this stage architecturally unique. But overall, it's never really been the stage I enjoyed playing all too much. Sky Arena, like, however many platforms or no platforms, is probably the dullest of the stages to play on. I mean, it's effectively just the training room stage and the training room stage with however many pass-throughable platforms there are on it. I do like that they've made a synth-pop version of the music that plays during the stage, making it sound more unique compared to the orchestral music of the other stages. And if you're looking for, like, just the cleanest, most bare bones, it's you versus your opponent, all else being equal, I think there's a reason why these stages, one with pass-throughable platforms and the very bare bones ones, appear most often in the competitive tournaments. There's just not too much to talk about in regards to the stage. Looks pretty neat though, I'll give it that. Cromulons was, I think, the first stage added to Multiversus. The introduction to the stage is pretty interesting. When it was revealed, the devs had a challenge for the player base that the stage would drop when they get overall collectively 3 million ringouts or something similar to that number, and that was achieved in a matter of hours. This stage is probably the one most familiar to me in terms of source material. I've never been a big Batman fan, haven't seen Game of Thrones. Adventure Time and Steven Universe were just kind of after I stopped watching Cartoon Network. But I have seen Rick and Morty, I have seen this episode. It centers largely around these 2 speaker platforms. They're solid objects that you can hang off on as far down as, well, your feet in the ring out zone. And like many side objects in Multiversus, they are destructible, though they can take far more of a punishment than pretty much all the others. And like other destructibles in Multiversus, once they're gone, they don't come back for the rest of the match. I do like that there's stages of destruction though. You can see how broken one of these side platforms are, and try to figure out, like, if the next hit is going to destroy it outright. But again, once they're gone, it becomes the training room stage with a pass-throughable platform in the center. I think this one was added later on. The map didn't launch with this, which made it just another version, a smaller version of the pass-throughable platformless training room and Sky Arena. It looks neat. I like seeing all the Cromulons in the background. But similar to other stages with destructible sides, it would be nice if there was some way they returned after a period of time, just to make the gameplay a little bit more interesting. It's like 2 Trophies Edge stages. These are for Multiversus. They don't necessarily aren't based off of any Warner Brothers properties, though you do see Warner Brothers stuff in the background. One of them is, they're both pretty simple. There's some smaller platforms to walk on and latch onto with a gap in the center. And the other one is just a larger center platform with some moving pass-throughable platforms. It's an alright stage. It's one of those stages that if you want more of a vanilla experience in the game, it's one of the better options. I think even these stages here would be a lot more interesting if items were in like 2v2. I've mentioned in my video about like why stages are important and how the lack of them in Multiversus hurt the game, that having items is also a great way of spicing things up. Music's pretty comfy here. Do like the soundtrack. But that's really all there is to talk about that one. Last stage is the court, and this one, it used to be in 2v2s, but was taken out of it, very quickly. And because I mainly play 2v2s, the stage effectively might not exist. One of the amusing gimmicks for this is that an item is guaranteed to spawn this basketball. And I like how all the characters have unique throwing animations for the basketball. It's a nice little attention to detail. These basketball hoops are pretty neat in the sense that they are more sides and like actual platforms. Like you can stand on them, but it's a hassle and a half even without enemies going after you. But you can kind of use them as a springboard for a quick double jump if need be. The other gimmick for this stage is that the sides are kind of barricaded and not able to be passed through, but they can be destroyed, if I recall correctly, as poor of a job as I'm doing showcasing that. I swear they can be, like, destroyed. There's also these, like, power-ups up here that affects your character's movements. I really haven't played on this stage enough to really get an idea of what can be done, but I think this is one of those stages that if it was brought back to 2v2s and played by more people, we'd be seeing a lot more interesting strategies. Like, obviously, being able to grab these power-ups helps. Using the ball, you always have an item on stage, or scoring these points, though I really don't know what they do. Presumably, it'd be like, it makes your attacks better. But I really don't know.
Okay, you can have that one in the name of Mars.
The music for a stage is pretty unique in the sense that it's not based, not from any of the Space Jam movies. It's designed to sound like it's from Space Jam. as opposed to the other soundtracks, which are orchestral renditions of music from their originating properties. And seems a bit odd that, like, the Space Jam theme in any capacity wouldn't be in here. Maybe it's like a rights issue? You know, rights and licensing? But it just comes off as so odd, given that the music in the first Space Jam, the main theme of it, is genuinely iconic. Even if the movie does suck. But yeah, that's just kind of my overall assessment of the stages. Hopefully when the game does relaunch, we'll be seeing a lot more interesting stages with, you know, unique architecture and unique gimmicks. One of the things that the devs really need to kind of veer away from is everything being symmetrical. Like, Batcave is symmetrical when you destroy both sides. Scooby's Haunted Mansion, you can at least choose if it's symmetrical or not. Game of Thrones is symmetrical. Sky Arena, The Court. There's no stage where, like, one side is higher and one side is lower by default. No stages where one side might have some ramps and one side might have some dips. For a competitive scene, that makes perfect sense. It's what competitive players would want, all things being equal. But from a casual perspective, it is kind of boring. See ya, bugs.